Good evening, everyone. This is Michael, and at this time, I'm going to be doing a little substituting for Tuya. She has so many things to prepare, so you'll be hearing from me for a little while. And I would just like to, before we get into our meditation on triangles, I would like to read a few sentences from Discipleship in the New Age, page 37. These are adapted by Tuya. The group idea must always be remembered by the students as they work. Seems like the most fundamental thing, doesn't it? Ever repeated by the Tibetan. They must not work as individuals, but as units in a coherent whole. And this will mean, of course, a change of our estimation of our identity. It is a kind of a focusing, at least imaginatively, within the soul, which is always group conscious, and which eventually brings home to our consciousness the fact that there is no my soul and thy soul, but only the soul. Going on a bit, this will distinguish the New Age methods from the past. The work will be group work, and usually for a group. You may remember how it is that healing groups oftentimes work not so much to heal the individual, yes, that's part of it, but to bring the healing energy to other groups. So what does it take, really, to be group conscious? Just pause for a minute and think. And it certainly requires, doesn't it, a decentralization, where we drop this ongoing preoccupation with the lower personal self, which the Tibetan has told us even those newly inducted into the ashram suffer from this. They're still so intensely interested in themselves. And a little bit more, we need to learn to bring soul energy from the reservoir of living force to humanity via our triangle work. So often souls are called the triangle or the triangles. And when we work in this manner at a method which is, as he says, so close to my heart, that's what the Tibetan tells us, we are making it possible for soul energy to really flow through that network of squares which so often characterizes the etheric body of so many of us. So such a simple, apparently simple task as every day lining up with our triangle or triangles and having that intensity of feeling and the emphasis on the will, and in those visualizations to sound the great invocation. A few introductory notes. The triangles of light and of goodwill are essentially invocative. They constitute the ABC of the coming science of invocation. It's going to be a major science during the Aquarian Age to realize that higher points of tension can be accessed and to know how to do it. And here is where he speaks of feeling and will. The strength of these triangles, their strength is dependent upon the depth of feeling in one case and the strength of the will in the other, with which they are created. I have here given those disciples, and that was quite a while ago, back in the 30s, really. Those disciples who are launching this new project, which is so close to my heart, an occult hint, really, isn't it? A new and useful hint. This work must go on. And from Rays and the Initiations, or is it, page 273, as humanity builds or creates the triangles of light and of goodwill, they are in reality invoking a response activity from two of the Buddhas of activity. Had we realized that our invocation could rise so high, of these Buddhas, the one who works through the medium of the will aspect, and the one who works through love in humanity, intelligently applied. Forget not that these three great Buddhas summarize in a peculiar sense the transmuted essence of the previous solar system, in which intelligent activity was the goal. So these Buddhas were actually planetary logoi in the previous solar system. Today, that essence underlies all the activity of this solar system. We have heard, have we not, of the primordial ray. It's not considered the divine ray, but it is substantial, primordial. So that essence of intelligence underlies all activity of this solar system. But, and this is the important change, it is motivated by love, as is characteristic of this second major solar system, but really the fifth in sequence. So the Buddhas of activity themselves form a deeply esoteric triangle. The Antakarana is slowly building. Within the body of the planetary logos, humanity is slowly building the Antakarana. And different Antakaranas go to different destinations. This is, in a larger sense, the linking thread between the head center of Sanat Kumara and his heart center. Here we would think of between Shambhala and hierarchy, and humanity has something to do with that. What we are attempting to finally do, in a very practical sense, is embodied in these words, so that there may be established a group Antakarana between the kingdom of souls and the world of men. So this is that part of the Antakarana which from humanity reaches into hierarchy. Now, as we enter into the meditation, we will breathe white light into our system a few times, drawing the light from the soul via the first part of the Antakarana. You know, it is a triangle, actually, from the mental unit into the soul body, from the soul body into the monastic permanent atom, and then the method which DK teaches, which is to project from the pool of energies gathered around the mental unit towards the monastic permanent atom. So we draw in the soul energies into that pool of retained energies around the mental unit, from the knowledge petals, the light of the soul, the love petals, the love of the soul, the sacrifice petals, carrying sacrificial will, the sacrificial intention to make sacred, which exists in the soul. And we draw in the factor of synthesis, which is, whereas the unity has to be created. And finally, the great will of the jewel in the lotus, which is an extension from the monad. We draw them all into a pool of retained energies, and from the astral vehicle towards the Buddhic permanent atom, and through this field of retained energies, we visualize the multicolored antikarana, but particularly colored at this time and for group purposes by the color indigo. We inaudibly sound the Om 3 times through our lower triangle, the 3 bodies of the personality. There is a special connection between the plane of transcendental mind, the Buddhic plane, and the astral plane. With projection mounted particularly from the mental unit and the area of retained energies. Now, we reference Discipleship Volume 1 in DK's instructions to one of his, let's say, more advanced students, whose final master really was Master Moria, with him being given to Master DK for training, as was the case in a number of instances. I would ask you, says DK, for a few minutes each morning prior to doing the group meditation, to rest quietly back in your chair or bed and, closing your eyes, link up with your soul and with me, your friend. So we will do the same, as if he is instructing us. You will thus create a triangle of light between your soul, your head center, and myself. So the presence of the Angel of the Presence and of Master DK, and also of the projection of the monad onto the higher mental plane, all of these are blending together. fix and hold this triangle firmly in your consciousness through the power of the creative imagination. Then see it as a solid triangle of light and not just as an outline. Visualize the base of the triangle on the mental plane, where Master DK works and where dwells and works your soul in the form of the angel of the presence and through the causal body. Oh. The lower point or apex touches the top of your head. Now see, pouring down via the triangle, a stream of light, golden, light orange in color, and not white. And see this flooding your whole body. And when you have visualized this as perfectly as possible, then rest back in that light. And bathe in it as you would bathe in the waters of the sea. See it permeating every part of your physical equipment. And let it do its work without your having any definite ideas as to what should be accomplished. And then DK says, the rest of the activity is in my hands, and you can safely leave it to me. And then he says, this exercise will aid you in handling your life problem and your service until such time as you enter into that light wherein consciousness awakens, free from the bonds of flesh. The blessing of your co-disciples is upon you, and yours upon them. And now the stage of contact, after having reached a poised stage and holding the consciousness steady in the mind and not in the head, can we distinguish the difference? Contact the spiritual triplicity, which is that which, quote, hovers over the square and radiates the energy of light into the waiting field of active thought. And now, as the will is so important, in one phase of this triangle's work, we will sound together the mantram of will. In the center of the will of God I stand. Naught shall deflect my will from his. I implement that will by love. I turn towards the field of service. I, the triangle divine, work out that will within the square and serve my fellow men. Now, as we inwardly contact our triangle's members, those who are working in a little network with us at first, be aware how your triangles, every time, become etherically more living and thus vitalize the global network of triangles. So we start with the premise that energy follows thought. And we call upon our group Triangles members by name and with love, and at least for the purposes of this group meditation, we will take about 3 minutes of silence to sound their names. As we visualize the flow of love and goodwill passing between the members of your triangle or triangles and emanating from one of the Buddhas of activity, the one who works with love, intelligently applied. We realize the words of the Christ, "A new commandment I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you also must love one another." And we feel this second ray energy helping to change the square like an etheric field. Along with it, of course, the spiritual light strengthened by the will and descending from that Buddha who works through the medium of the will. So both together, love and light, and the realization of the Christ, I am the light of the world. So let us ponder and share with our Triangles members. light and love. And eventually there will be created the triangles of the will to good. But first, to establish the goodwill, which is love in action, flowing through our triangles and all the members, and then the light of the soul, maybe a little more esoteric, the triangles of light. And contributing our little network, contributing to the network of golden triangles, and finally reaching the three Buddhas of activity, who are the deeply esoteric sponsors of the whole process. So visualize that linking up of your own little network with the Global Triangles Network and with the three great sponsors, the Buddhas of activity. And through the use of the creative imagination, we can really do something of value, the work of which must, as the Tibetan tells us, go on. We know that these Buddhas, such great beings, assisting the Lord of the world, can, in cases of emergency, and who is to judge what the emergency really might be, intervene for protective purposes, protecting humanity. And our little efforts will go towards building the planetary Antakarana, which reaches towards Venus, and from the seven spirits before the throne, the seven sacred planets, of which ours is not one, the Antakarana continues towards the solar logos, and on it goes. And now, the centerpiece of all of our work, which is the great invocation.
the center where the will of God is known. Let purpose guide the little wills of men. The purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Let light and love and power restore the
We see the global network of triangles covering the entire planet. And imagining this, we endeavor to realize the factual nature of this great living spiritual organism which constantly substands world affairs. We see it, we visualize it, as a growing, vital reality of such life and potency that it can break through or break up all limiting cleavages, and by the very force of its interior life eventually externalize itself. We visualize at least 100,000 living triangles functioning within the square-like etheric body of Earth, still a non-sacred planet, transmuting it into triangles. And through the network which the triangles are creating, light or illumination is invoked by the daily work and attitude of the triangle's members, and thus indeed light can descend on earth, and goodwill, which is the love of God in action, and fundamentally behind it the will to good, can also stream forth in fuller livingness into the hearts of all human beings. We attempt to see Earth as a sacred planet, which interiorly it is, and humanity redeemed. So we sound the Om 3 times, very consciously. Seeing to the redemption of the outer form under the guidance of the soul. We sustain the circulation of love and light. And let not a day pass where we do not imagine the triangles growing in strength and underlying beneficently the affairs of human beings, which at present, of course, need so much correction and redemption. We want to thank you for your participation, and we'll be doing nightly, at least in Europe, nightly presentations for a while. And the different, at least some of the different study groups will also be presented mostly on the Zoom. And I think you have received your work, your weekly schedule, and I hope you have received the update of the monthly schedule. And we will persist in offering benevolent streams of thought into the thought atmosphere of humanity, trusting that we can contribute to the reorientation toward much higher points of tension for the human race.